So good morning, everyone. I'm Rohit from the marketing team at Lead, India's largest school edtech company. On behalf of Lead, I would like to welcome you all to the live webinar on how to grow your school's admissions. Today, we have with us Deepak Hariharan. Deepak is the expansion head, integrated solutions at Lead, an alumnus of IIM Calcutta and NIT Calicut. Deepak comes with 15 years of experience across various functions, including business development, client engagement, project delivery, planning, and mentoring. He has held leadership positions at prominent startups like Tata 1MG, Zomato, and Feedback Infra. He has also been a TEDx speaker, advisor, and mentor to various entrepreneurship platforms like Center for Entrepreneurship at Ashoka University. I'm sure you'll gain a lot from today's session, given his knowledge and experience in the subject. So, without further ado, I would request him to kindly initiate this session. Deepak, please take the stage.
Thank you so much, Rohit, and welcome one and all to the session. It's a pleasure to see various educators and school owners, principals, and faculty joining in from across the country. I can see from the northernmost corners, southernmost, from the easternmost to the westmost, where we have people from everywhere. Thank you so much for joining in. So, over the course of today's session, I'm going to be talking broadly in terms of how to drive admissions for the school, right? And a lot of the learnings that are coming in here and that I'm going to be talking about is coming from the organizational knowledge that we have built across 9,000 plus schools. So, not talking too much about the organization per se, but we have been working across 9,000 schools across 400 plus cities. We work with diverse schools from low fee schools to high fee schools, low size schools to large size schools. And we understand a fair amount of perspective from these 9,000 different experiences. And that's something that we have put together in terms of how we are, in terms of how we can help you in terms of admissions for your organization going forward. So, without further ado, starting off in terms of looking at the key decision maker for admissions is fundamentally the parents, right? And the aspirations, the needs of the parents are very different across different places. So, the primarily, if you were to look at the key aspiration, what does a parent really want for the child? Is not just marks, but it's actually a setting up for a great future for the child. As great future can be in terms of career, can be in terms of developing the person as an individual, as an independent thinker, as a decision maker, in terms of soft skills and in terms of life skills. It is an overall comprehensive great future that a person wants for their child, and it's not just limited to board marks. Now, I remember when I was in school a few decades back, everything used to be about board marks. There used to be a formula. You do well in the board, you get into a good college, that means you get into a good job, that means you work and live happily forever. But now with the increased exposure, I think parents are looking for a lot more. It's not just board exam results that they want, but also more importantly, they also want that the children should be future ready citizens. And they expect schools to play a very large role in this, right? So the expectation is that they help the child develop in multiple spheres, not just in academics, but also in sports, in arts, in multiple different things. And they build the real world skills and develop the confidence to take on the world once they graduate from the school. And also a lot of every parent wants the best for their child, and they also take pride in the fact that their child goes to the best school that they can afford in the locality. Right? So there are multiple things that they want. They want a great future for child, not just marks, but also a lot more in terms of the skill sets and also that the pride that they're studying the best school. Now comes a question. For all of us as school owners, are we meeting the requirements and are we meeting the evolved expectations of the parents? Right? So if I look at it, when I was in school and when my parents were in school and when my parents were in school, the teaching was with a blackboard and a chalk and with textbooks, right? And it used to be similar even during my childhood. It used to be all of Doordarshan was the only entertainment source at home. So you would spend time in school, study, come back home, go out to play for a little while, come back, do homework, watch maybe an hour of TV because there's nothing much to watch on it, and you're done for a day. Versus the ecosystem that today everybody has with the smartphones, with internet being available, with so much more content coming in, there is a strong competition for attention. Children are used to seeing multimedia, they're used to seeing animation, they're used to seeing movies, and therefore the exposure is very different. Now, the kind of with that kind of exposure, when you have a lot of moving objects, you have a lot of moving content, audiovisual content that is grabbing the attention. When we try to do the teaching in the conventional method, it doesn't necessarily capture sufficient attention of the students, and therefore the learning curve is very different. Also, if you look at it globally, right? If you look at some of the best practices, what have other countries done in the world, be it the developed ecosystems or even developing ecosystems, like a country like Brazil is a great role model, where you see a lot of systems like personalized learning has actually taken up a pride of place. Personalized learning fundamentally is where a particular every student is empowered to achieve the academic outcomes that are commensurate to their level. It's like teaching at the right level and learning at the right level. What this means is that in any school, if you were to look at in any class, you would be seeing in your school as well, there would be these 15, 20, 30% students who are doing really, really well. There would be these 30, 40% who are in the middle of spectrum, and there would be under 20, 30% who are not doing so well. But typically, our systems are built in such a way that we cater to all the students in an equitable manner, right? And that is something that that comes in from the personalized learning angle. When we take a look at it, is when we actually give teaching at the right level for each student, and the different ways in which we can do it. We'll talk about that briefly. The other element is world-ready skills, right? As I talked about exposure, as I talked about readiness for different things. Now, a lot of schools are starting to invest in terms of readiness for entrance exams, for example, right? And there are a lot of schools investing in art, sports, sciences. I think that kind of holistic learning, integrated learning, enjoyable and engaging learning is something that a lot of schools are starting to take up now, and even is advocated by the national education policy, the new education policy that's come up. And also, adoption of technology is becoming mainstream and becoming a requirement as we look at things.
Yeah, Deepak,
Yes,
before we move ahead, I would like to request everyone to share whatever questions they have during the session in the question and Q&A button or in the chat with us. Before we move further, I have a poll for the audience. Audience, I will be launching a poll right now. It will be on your screen. Please vote for the option you think is the best. When do we need to start working on admissions? I will be closing this poll in a minute, so please answer. Right, great. We're getting a great response, Deepak.
good to know.
Yeah, just a few more seconds. I'll be closing the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll share the results of the poll with you, Deepak.
Sure.
So 44% of the audience thinks it's an all-year process. Would you like to shed a light on it?
No, absolutely. I think 44% saying it's a all-year process, and there are 30% who say it's a 3-month process, and there is
Yes.
7% who says it's a 1-month process, right? So I think if I'm just highlighting a little bit more on that topic, right? It is not a seasonal activity, right? If you were to look at any other brand that gets built, any other customer facing organization, any other student facing organization, any other entity which you think of, you don't think of it only at the time of need, right? So, for example, if you're thinking of changing your tires, you don't do it only, or if you're thinking of changing some batteries, you at the time when the need comes, you will go to the battery outlet that you know of. You'll go to the battery brand that you know of. Right? If you look at why does MRF advertise, why does CEAT advertise, why does Excite batteries advertise? It is not that people need it around the year, but when the need comes, that is top of mind. Same thing works with admissions. Right? It's a consistent year-long effort, and I'm glad that 44% of people have actually talked about it. So it is a year-long effort that to actually build your brand, build a recognition, build a visibility that actually translates into success. And we have seen it time and again with many schools, as I said, with the schools that we've been working with. We've seen the schools that try doing it last minute. Now, there are schools who wait for last minute, just at the admission season, they would go ahead and put a hoarding or do door-to-door campaigning. They get some results, but the best results are those who actually spend and work on it around the year. So delving into this in a little more detail. Uh, so if I were to look at the 5 secret ingredients, the 5 secret steps to growing school admissions, I would break it down into 5 parts actually. So number 1 is, first we need to plan and own the cycle, which is being very specific about what is that we really require and what do we aim to achieve, how we plan to do it, and when this will be done. So it is in terms of having a goal in mind about where we want to be. Okay, we'll talk about this, and having a specific owner for it from within your team. Second is about creating value that stands out. Now, when you go and reach out to parents, apart from reaching the parent and engaging with the parent, what is most important is saying, what are you doing differently? Or what is the value that you're creating for the student and for the parent that really stands out? Not just the act of reaching out. Then comes the act of creating the brand itself, which is about creating multiple avenues where we're able to touch and engage with clients, engage with parents around the year. And if you were to dig deep a little deeper, when you actually engage with parents and once they visit the school, how do you create that experience which is absolutely memorable? Creating a holistic experience that they are left impressed by the school, by the capabilities, by the infrastructure, by the people, by the pedagogy. And how do you go ahead and convert that to an admission? Through constant engagement, keeping a constant communication channel with the parents during, before, and after the visit. Okay. We're going to get a little deeper into each of these points. So number 1 that we talked about was in terms of seeing the big picture first before we get into the specifics of it. Now, the big picture fundamentally is about defining your expectations about where you expect your school to be 5 years from now. Right? Is it a school that's going to have 2,000 students? Is it that you're going to open 3, 4, 5 more branches of the school? Now, every school owner and school stakeholder has a vision in terms of where they want to go to. But once you state it, is when it becomes a more tangible and something that we can start driving towards. So the first thing is to actually figure out what are the expectations that you have in terms of where you want to be, and take a look at the same thing 5 years back. 5 years back, where you were and the kind of growth that you've achieved to come to where you are now. If you continue doing the same thing, will it get you to where you need to be in 5 years? If the answer is yes, perfect. But in a lot of schools that we have seen that it takes a tangible and conscious effort to actually do something different. And what are you going to be doing differently to make this happen is very important to take a look at. Now, breaking it down into intermediate milestones, right? If you're saying sitting in 2023 and you're saying in 2028, I want to be doing X. Let's say, for example, I currently have 500 students. I want to get to 2,000 students by 2028. Now, it's not a one-step jump that happens, but it's a thought-through process with different milestones that you take a look at, saying that by in the next year's admissions, how many do you want to get? The next year after that, what do you want to get? The following year, what do you do? And so on and so forth. Then you break down the goal between now to the next, to 12 months from now. What is it that we need to do month on month to make that happen? Right? And assign an owner to this plan. We will talk about how to make it happen, the intermediate milestone, in a little more detail going forward. But one thing which is very, very important. Now, a lot of school owners tend to be doing this alongside certain other activities, or even while running a school, there are a lot of pulls and pressures. Right? There are a lot of things that come up which are very urgent, critical. There is some crisis or the other that we are solving for, and that makes us lose the big picture very often. So it's very important that we have one person in your school who's actually owning this and driving this end to end. Now, this owner could be somebody who's an academic coordinator at your school. It could be a senior teacher. It could be the principal himself or herself, or it could be yourself. Now, what does this dedicated admissions person do? Fundamentally, there are a lot of administrative activities which are involved with admissions that need to be taken care of. Working closely with the principal on the admissions piece to plan the entire marketing plan, the brand building activities, the timelines, and how to go about doing it towards engaging and creating avenues for students to reach out. Being responsible for handling parent communications, driving parent walk-ins, driving the kind of admissions counseling that's required, and maintaining regular communication through either a WhatsApp or other methods, whatever is suitable. Now, this person typically needs good communication skills, presentation skills, a reasonably good understanding of the parents in the locality, and should have the willingness to learn and be proactive in planning. Experience in the school, experience school administration, etc., is good to have. Now, you can, depending on the scale of aspiration, the scale of requirement, have a dedicated person around the year, or as I mentioned, you can use one of your existing senior staff members to do this, and go ahead and set targets. Set your annual targets, set your monthly targets, and then on weekly saying these are the actions to be done, and set up a rhythm of weekly catch-ups or at least monthly reviews happening with the admissions person. This is something that we have seen as a big difference maker. Schools that have dedicated people who are working on admissions versus schools who are working in a more diffused fashion. So this is one of the single largest drivers that actually help uh, keep a school focused and to drive admissions forward. Second is to create the value. Now, this value and differentiation that comes in is on the back of the kind of programs that you run, the kind of engagement that you run. Now, as I mentioned, to capture the attention of the child and to ensure that they're learning the right way, the old methods of rote learning and memorization are not working as effectively as they did in the past. Right? But for a deeper understanding, what we have seen is really working is doing a what we call as VAK learning. This is a fairly internationally renowned process of learning, which is in terms of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Now, visual learning means where you have some sort of a multimedia, could be in terms of a television, could be in terms of a smart board, etc., available in the classroom, which engages the child, which is like an assistant to the teacher in terms of explaining certain slightly more advanced concepts or getting the children more curious and interested. So, for example, if you have to teach a child about the human circulatory system, right, a clean animation or a video which shows how the heart is pumping blood through the arteries and the veins and how the circulation is happening is far more impactful as compared to explaining it verbally or drawing it on the board or showing a photo of it. Right? So this helps learning become so much better. Second is the auditory part, which is where the teacher is explaining and helping the child understand the concepts. And thirdly is the kinesthetic part, which is learning by doing, by a touch and feel. So for example, if you look at some subjects like mathematics, now children historically, including in my generation, half the world is probably scared of maths, right? Because they don't understand the numbers or understand what does the number really mean or what is the real world application of it. But if you, on the other hand, make it gamified, so for example, if you teach fractions, if you actually showcase it using some using certain shapes which you can touch and feel, they assemble 4 quarters and make a full. They understand that 4 quarters make equal to 1. 1 by 4 into 4 equals 1. That's the best way to learn math than to actually do it in an abstract manner. So visual auditory and kinesthetic learning is something that really has helped schools historically. The other thing that is very important, I talked about this briefly earlier, was about personalized learning. Now, personalized learning is a form where you're actually able to cater to the high performers, the average performers, and the poor performers, all of them. Pardon me. So every child who joins the school, every parent has the same aspiration for the child. The child should do well. Every parent is paying the same fees, and every child unfortunately has a different learning level. And we need to be able to actively engage with every child at his or her learning level to be able to derive the best learning outcome for that child. So in a class, if there are certain children who are higher proficiency children who do things faster, they tend to get bored easily and lose interest in classes. So for them, doing something on the higher order thinking skills is something which is very important, which means you give them more complex things to work on, which engages their mental appetite and also trains them to do better. On top of it, there's an option of giving additional practice also for some of these students. For medium proficiency learners, the process of I do, we do, you do is one of the best proven methods. And there's something which NEP and other guidelines also talk about, which is initially the teacher leads the explanation, gets the group to do an activity, followed by the individual child doing the activity, which helps the child learn and retain best. And for the slower learners, investing additional time in terms of special attention, in terms of remedials is something that's very important. Now, imagine if you go ahead and showcase to every parent who comes in that you are able to teach the child in a 360-degree multimodal manner with the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learning. If you are able to showcase that we are teaching and getting every child up to the level required, by supporting children differently basis their learning curves. Now that makes a huge impact for the parent. Right? So the creation of value depends on how we're able to showcase this. Now, on top of this, there's a lot more you can showcase in terms of the infrastructure you have, in terms of the kind of facilities you have, the programs you run, the events you do, etc. But at a fundamental core academic level, these are certain interventions that are good to consider doing, which makes you stand out from the rest of the world. Number three, we talked about building brand all year. Right? What does this really mean? One, creating the value that we talked about in terms of pedagogy, in terms of life skills, holistic learning, technology adoption. Now we have created the value, but if the parent doesn't know that you have done so much in terms of your school, then that doesn't necessarily translate to admissions for a while until the word of mouth spreads. So to encourage the word of mouth, we need to look at how do we engage and reach the parents through the year. Now we would see during the peak season, you see every hoarding in the city is taken up by some school or the other, which has photos of the 10 toppers from the school put up there. But the messaging is undifferentiated. Right? There is a lot of door-to-door activity that happens at the time of decision making. Parents are flooded with 5 options, right? But if you are able to make your mark in the parents' mind even before all of this starts, before the entire admission chaos and peak starts, that works very differently. So we can do this actively using channels like WhatsApp, using the existing parent and teacher networks very effectively. And we'll talk about this briefly as we go forward. And importantly, building the recall, right? By doing this reach, by communicating what we're doing, and then clearly engaging with them time and again, creating reasons for a parent to visit a school through creating events, etc., would actually get you a lot more traction and gets those footfalls. Once they come to the school, they experience the school, then it's an indelible memory that they create. And that really helps us during the admission season. So creating that memorable experience, creating a reason to engage around the year actually helps in the admission season down the line. So some broad thoughts around that, like just a very simple, I just filled in some elements here. So for example, doing a painting competition for the entire locality. Now could be something like a student-led event at the school. So for example, there are schools who actually gone ahead and created events where the children talk about various things. Now this could be, let's say, somebody doing a small model volcano and explaining that. And imagine the joy a parent has in seeing his or her child do it, and also inviting relatives, inviting the public to come into a school just to see certain events. There are schools that have started doing off-late, and you would have seen this happening more and more. In many places, there are student-led movements that have started picking traction. So, for example, it could be something about a movement against plastic. It could be something about pollution. It could be about overall healthy lifestyle. Like here, you can see the photo about children promoting healthy lifestyle. So this kind of a thing also is a fun experience for the children, and it's a lot of fun for the parents as well, and something that brings visibility in school, grabs attention around the area, right? And it's a social cause that people are pushing for in the process. Similarly, can be sports meets. There can be different avenues through which you can actually build the brand all year, right? So it's open to your creativity in terms of how we can do it. But making these open events open to public, open to other students in the area is something that works really well. There are schools that do certain things like an IQ test, like a GK test. You know, a lot of things can happen. And you just do some small publicity and typically get good attention for that. So that's about the step 3. And then moving forward, if I were to look at it, in terms of delivering the unforgettable experience for the parents and students coming to the school. So there are 3 parts to it. I will break it down to. So one is doing a school tour. Right? In terms of school tour, also making them see how a running classroom works, see the quality of education that is coming in. That creates a real world touch and feel for the parent. Second is from showcasing the school's infrastructure. If there is something that we are really proud of in terms of showcasing some audiovisual learning system that we have, in terms of our library facilities, in terms of our lab facilities, right? Showing that is something that really builds confidence in the parent. And the third thing that really creates that memory aid, that helps them recall exactly what the school is about, is in terms of what I talked about in terms of visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Imagine if somebody is coming in for admission for, let's say, a nursery child, or let's say for a grade 2 child. If you get them to sit through a 15-20 minute classroom where a teacher showcases that this is how we teach, this is how we engage students, and get the parents to be the students for that classroom, that experiencing a class is something that becomes an indelible memory for them, especially if you're using some new techniques, if you're using something on the personalized learning, if you're using something in terms of the VAK learning methods. This is a experience that it's true that the parents would never have had in terms of learning with a television in the classroom. And once they see it, once they like it, then that translates much better into an admission event.
Deepak,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. While we are on the topic of delivering an unforgettable experience
Uh-huh.
and school infrastructure, we have a question from Falguni. She's asking, they have a good learning at school, but the infrastructure is not liked by the parents. So, is there something that to tackle that basically?
Okay, so I said, Falguni, thank you so much for the question. So you're saying that the infrastructure is not liked by the parents. Now, it could be, if I were to look at infrastructure, there are fundamentally three elements that are important for a school, right? One is the physical infrastructure, which is the building, the classrooms, the look and feel of it, the furniture, right? Which is, I would say, the cold infrastructure part of it. Then there is the element which is in terms of how the school is enabling learning, which is in terms of could be the library, the computer lab, the audiovisual equipment, etc. that we use, which is the warm infrastructure for the school. And then the third element which comes in is with regard to the teachers and the style of teaching. Right now, typically the delivery of a learning experience comes in from all these three factors, but more importantly from the second and the third. Right. So while the school may not have great infrastructure, I mean, one is to go ahead and try to upgrade it to the extent possible where finances permit. But more importantly, if you can showcase the second two elements, if you can showcase the quality of children, if you can showcase, let's say, if a parent is coming for a visit, if they can talk to a grade 5 child and have a 5-minute conversation and the child is speaking in good English, now that is impressive for the parent. So where physical infrastructure is a bit of a challenge, building the school infrastructure in terms of, as I said, the technology and the library and the labs kind of system is something that really works. And the teacher quality is something that really makes a difference.
Right, great. Thanks for that answer, Deepak. Please continue.
All right. Thanks, Rohit. All right. So that's about, so in terms of delivering the unforgettable experience, the school tour, the school infrastructure, and the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learning. Now, very importantly, whenever a parent visits a school, also important that we go ahead and capture their information in the form of a parent database who we can reach out to later. So this is something very important that we should keep in mind, that you capture the details, you store it. And again, this is where the role of the academic coordinator, the admissions coordinator comes in, who goes ahead and captures the database and ensures there's an engagement that happens going forward. So on this, Rohit, if you want to.
Yeah, everyone, we have another poll wherein I'll just launch it right now. It will be on your screen. Let us know how would you prefer to engage with parents? Would it be by running contests, school tours, VAK experience, which is visual, auditory, and kinesthetic experience, or all of the above? Please let us know. Right, getting a great response. I would still urge the audience to share their answer. Right, great. I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. I'll just share the results with you, Deepak.
All right. Thank you so much, Rohit.
84% of the audience said all of the above, which is a great testament to what you have presented. People have really engaged with that.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Rohit. So I
please
think
continue.
84% of the people have mentioned all the above. There are 8% who saying about the contest and 6% about school tours. So thank you so much
Yes.
for sharing that, everyone. And so, as I said, now that we've gone ahead and built the parent database, how do we go ahead and engage with them? So sharing a few ideas towards that, right? So the constant engagement. Now, let's say, for example, you've done an event. Now, going back to the calendar that we talked about, right? We said, let's say in October, you've done an event. Parents come, they got some of the friends also to come in. They see the school, they are interested, they have a conversation with academic coordinator. You have taken the prospective parents' details in October. Now, between October and next year, when the admission is about to happen, what do you keep doing? Keep engaging. So what we mean by keep engaging is what events are happening. Let's say there's an annual day that happens. Right now, what do? We invite the parents of our children to come in. Right? Now, what if we invite the prospective parents also to come in saying, okay, hi, are you looking at getting your child admitted to school? Why don't you come and visit our annual day? During the annual day, can the school owner or principal or senior faculty talk about all the achievements of the school and talk about what they have planned for the coming year? Right? Some of those things, and because as a parent, and I also have a 5-year-old, so I know how difficult the school choice has been. There's a lot of research, and typically what you do as a parent is, if you want to find out about a school, you try to find somebody else who's a parent of the school and try to ask them, right? But to be top of mind, you want, and but my strong preference would have been to actually visit the school, which we finally did, right, before getting the admission, to understand how the school is and understand how the faculties, how the infrastructure is, etc. So creating an avenue where it's very easy for that prospective parent to come to your event is something very important. Second is also a parent referral program, which we've seen working beautifully. Now, a parent referral program is where you encourage your parents to go ahead and talk to their other friends about this. Now, there are different schools who do it differently. Now, a parent referral program is simply a matter of asking the parent to do it. Now, in a lot of cases, your parents would be happy with you, your students would be happy with you, but some of the idea doesn't come in their mind that they should proactively reach out to a friend to tell them, please join the school. Right? But when you actually go ahead and inform parents during, let's say, a parent-teacher meet, or even otherwise, I'm assuming a lot of you would have WhatsApp channels of communication with your parents, but in case you're not doing it, it's a good idea to get started on that. And every so often put something interesting from the school, from the classes over there, and use it also occasionally to inform them that, hi, our admission season is starting from such and such month. So in case you know any other parents, new parents in your circle who are looking for a school, please do let them know about us. And this is how they can reach us. So for example, the admission coordinator's phone number can be shared. Or if you have a website or you have a Facebook handle or Instagram handle that you're using actively, you can go ahead and share that link also with parents and requesting them to share it forward. Now, a lot of parents would do it directly willingly. Now, some schools also go ahead and use certain incentives for this. So, for example, if a parent is referred and the parent, both parents get 1,000 rupees or reduction in the fees. Let's say some of those programs also used. Now it is your call in case you would like to go ahead and use it. Thirdly, teacher referral programs. Now, teachers obviously have very fantastic network in terms of their own, and also amongst the teaching community, and also with the parents, they have a great rapport with the parent-teacher meet and other forums. So incentivizing your teachers also towards this is a good idea. So we have seen programs where the teachers are incentivized. It could be as small as rupees 500 per student who comes in through their recommendation, etc. But that's a strong incentive for the teacher to continue proactively conversing about the school. Right? You can do your admissions coordinator, or you yourself can go ahead and do a small training for your teachers about how to go pitch the school in the first place. We already use them in many cases for door-to-door activities, etc., door-to-door flying, etc. But instead, can we use them proactively with an incentive built in to make this happen? So engagements by inviting parents to events, engagements through parent to parent, engagement through a teacher referral program, and of course, on top of this, what the admissions coordinator does through WhatsApp and other means to stay engaged with parents is something which really adds and continues the momentum. Otherwise, it's very easy. Some parent comes in October or November and you lose touch with the parent might also forget about it. But every month or every 2 months, if there's a reason to engage, that really builds confidence and really helps with this. So just a quick summary of what we talked about so far. So in terms of one, plan for this and have a dedicated owner. Two, in terms of creating value that really stands out, be different from the other schools, not necessarily just by physical infrastructure, but in terms of the way you teach, the way you adopt technology, the way you're offering a multimodal learning. Imagine the delight. And this is something which actually happened with the school that I met recently. So he said he he suddenly found a surge in admissions happening, right? And he was trying to figure out what happened, and he was very, of course, very happy about it. He was trying to figure out what happened. Then he figured that his students who were using, because he had started using TVs in the classroom, and that was an integral part of all the periods that were happening. So the students who are having great learning experience here used to go back to the playground in the evening, play with other friends, and then tell the other friends about this kind of an experience. And then those friends would actually go to the parents and say, "Mere school mein TV kyun nahi? Why don't I have a TV in my school?" And those kind of, and once that happened, they started inquiring, where is it that this news is coming from? And he suddenly had a surge in admissions last year. So some of these very interesting stories come up from different schools, and the way the investment in technology, etc., actually makes a huge difference for them uh, to stand out and also to attract attention. The third thing that we talked about was building a brand is a all-year activity. It is not a one-off activity. It is up to us to create multiple avenues for parents to come and reach out to us. Fourthly, once a parent comes to school, ensure that they have a great experience. Not just that, Apache, please fill this form. We will get in touch with you. If that's not experience you want to give a parent, once a parent comes, you really want to showcase the best that you have. Infra, teachers, and also make them experience the classroom. That makes a world of a difference. And lastly, ensure that we are always in touch with the parent. We are constantly engaging day in, day out. Right? So that's in a nutshell the 5 key messages that we have. If there are a couple of questions, we can take that, and then we can also talk about if there is some help that you need in terms of taking this forward, how we can help out also if you're interested.
Yes, Deepak. We have a question from Saranya.
Mhm.
What are the things that can be improved in the schools from rural areas?
Thank you so much, Saranya. So, in fact, when I was talking about the 9,000 schools that we're learning from, those 9,000 schools, out of which about close to 80% of the schools would be coming from semi-urban or rural areas. Right now, because it's spread across the country, because learning needs are across the country, students are across the country. So, in a rural ecosystem, the world is not that different. The number of options might be slightly lesser, but for the schools that exist, the aspirations of parents are similar. There might be some challenges that are there in terms of infrastructure, in terms of power, in terms of internet, etc. But as long as there is a will, there is still the option of enabling all these activities. Right now, for example, even if it is not an urban center, you would still have villages and towns in the vicinity where we can still go ahead and talk of the same things that we're doing here right here. In terms of the flyering still happens in those markets. In terms of still the reach outs happen, there are different levels of reach outs that can happen there. In every nook and cranny, we already have smartphones being available. So a lot of parents are increasingly on platforms like WhatsApp, right? And even in some other markets where WhatsApp is not that dominant, internet is also not that dominant. So the telecalling can happen by the same admissions coordinator. So there are multiple avenues. A lot of things that we have talked about here are equally applicable in the rural markets. And in fact, rural markets is given the density is a little lesser, you actually have the bigger opportunity to stand out as compared to more expensive schools or very high infra schools.
Right, right. Thanks for that answer, Deepak. We'll take another question,
Sure.
which was shared by Parush Arora. They
Mhm.
want to know two aspects in terms of increasing their admissions. They have an existing school which is 25 years old, and for a new school which is 2 years old.
Mhm.
These schools are located outside the city, and they cater to parents who are financially in the category of middle segment. So, please, if you could shed some light on that if possible.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Parush, for the question. So everything that I said actually applies to a wide spectrum of schools, including especially the middle segment of schools. Right now, in the middle segment of schools, if I look at okay, let me break the schools into 3 segments. One, there are schools which charge fees of, let's say, 35, 40, 50,000 and higher, who have really good infrastructure, who have really good teachers, right? And they're also able to invest heavily in terms of teacher quality. Teachers who earn, let's say, 35, 40, 50,000 rupees also, and therefore they're making a difference, and they're already leader schools because of the quality of things that they do. Now, if I look at a middle level school, which is, let's say, charging anywhere between 15,000 to 30,000 rupees in fees. Now, I understand that there are certain challenges that we tend to have in terms of the quality of infrastructure available, and also in terms of quality of teachers available because of the cash flows and the financial considerations of running the school. So in those cases is where actually adopting some of this technology, etc., becomes even more important, right? Where you're actually able to make every teacher a good teacher and deliver a consistently good experience at a similar fee point as your comparable school. So, for example, I'm just taking for simplicity, Parush, I'm just assuming that let's say the fees of your school is about 20,000 rupees. Okay. Now, therefore, the kind of teachers that you would have, the kind of capability that you have would be similar to any other school which is charging the same fee. Now, but if you are able to, at a very small cost, add more technology to it, have TVs in every classroom for a better learning experience, have your teachers equipped to actually deliver a high quality learning experience similar to a urban school or similar to a higher fee school, then you really stand out from the crowd. And that's something that we can really explore. In fact, I will just take 5 minutes to just delve a little deeper into that in terms of a couple of things that we do at Leadership Boulevard. Right, just for an idea, when you can choose Leadership Boulevard, you can choose any other product if you wish to. But just to give an idea about how things are working nowadays in schools, and we have been working with a lot of schools in a similar segment. So, for example, uh, a lot of things that we offer at Leadership Boulevard, which is the parent company of Lead School, and we have a couple of other products now, is in terms of of course, the books that are conventional and that are part of the program in most schools. Right now, within that, we have some of the best content that's been created by Lead itself. And recently, we also acquired Pearson India K-12 business. You would have heard of Pearson, a reputed international publisher, and they've been one of the leading publishers in the Indian market for 25 years. So their books and Lead books both are available as part of programs. Number one. Second, the audiovisual learning, which is in terms of televisions in the classroom, which helps the child learn much better. And this is for every core subject for every period. It is not that now a lot of schools, what they do is they call themselves smart school. You would have seen the differentiation that people try to build by saying, I'm a smart enabled school, I'm a smart school, smart classroom, all of those concepts that come in. But what schools do typically is that they would actually have one room which has a TV or a smart board, and students would go of every class would be taken there once a week for one subject and shown a movie or shown some sort of video. But that is not really what a smart school is. If you want to make a differentiation, having a real smart school means that you're actually using these audiovisual elements in every single class, every single period. Right? And the kinesthetic learning is again something that is important. So by bringing all these three elements together, makes life so much better for the parent. Right? Because the parent can now see how the student is learning in different ways. As I said, during the mock classroom, when a parent walks in, the parent should actually see how the learning happens. One subject, let's say if someone's coming for a grade 5 admission, show them how one class, one subject in, like, for example, the human body that we are seeing here, the digestive system we are seeing here. Imagine if this is shown in this manner as compared to, and you can also, likely you can also challenge them saying, please go to any other school which is at my fee bracket and see what kind of learning program they have versus what I offer. Right? Now that makes a big difference. Similarly, if you were to look at it, also the learning at the right level that we talked about, which is in terms of the remedial, the higher order thinking skill questions. We also have programs like English language and general ability, which because one of the things that we've seen, especially, and I could see that there were a couple more questions about how do you differentiate in a rural area. There were one or two more that came up. So one thing that we have seen historically is that in rural areas, parents want the child to speak very good English. That itself was a great measure of success and a matter of pride for them. So if we are able to actually teach the child at the right level and bring them up in terms of communication skills, bring them up in terms of exposure to different formats, could be some sort of competition, national competition that happen, could be in terms of some sort of master classes. So we have a couple of these programs at Lead in terms of a national championship that is there, which is also telecast globally on YouTube, etc. There are some master classes by experts like Madhavan, Chetan Bhagat, Leander Pace, etc. So some of the exposure elements also help the child. And very importantly, what I want to talk about was the teacher enablement. Right now, we in a middle fee school, as Parish was highlighting, in a middle fee school, we typically have middle salaried teachers with less experience or moderate experience. So one thing that really differentiates is if every teacher is able to teach at the level of a superb teacher, of a teacher of a far more expensive school, and therefore the child is getting the benefit of it at a lower fee, that is a huge differentiation that stands out. And how do we enable it? Now, by giving them a standardized teaching program, which is in the form of a lesson plan, a day plan, and also building in all the resources, the audiovisual resources that we talked about. So that is one part in terms of during the classroom, how a teacher can actually teach much, much better. Second is in terms of the teacher also having their own self-development. Now, even NCRT mandates certain trainings, and also the teachers also need some upskilling time and again, and that really helps attract good talent even in the school. A lot of us in the middle fee schools see the challenge of talent attraction also for teachers, because teachers come 6 months, they leave, or getting good quality teachers, especially in a semi-urban and rural areas, is a bit of a challenge. So here we find that every teacher can actually be upgraded to the right level while being locally present. And also a lot of in-person training, etc., that happens, which helps the schools develop. And this is something which is a program that's been developed specifically for the semi-urban and rural schools. And that's the reason why I'm highlighting it here. And of course, technology enablement, there's a lot of stuff that happens in terms of helping the principal stay on top of the school. Now, for example, as Parush mentioned, he has 2 schools. So physically being present in both the schools all the time is a challenge. But irrespective of wherever you are, if you can actually see how your school is performing. Now, when I say performing, this could be in terms of the coverage of syllabus, which itself is a large concern lots of times, whether it's happening on time or not. In terms of how a teacher's performing, in terms of the grades that the class and the subject are getting, in terms of how a student's performing in terms of marks, in terms of attendance, in terms of also one big differentiator that actually comes is if you're able to give the parent a close insight in terms of how the student is performing. Now, typically, this is limited to parent-teacher meets that happen once in a while. In most schools, happens once a month or once in a quarter. Now, in a parent-teacher meet, is when the parent has a window for a 10-15 minute opportunity. There's another parent already queuing, so teachers typically spend 5-10 minutes. But a parent who's really invested in the child wants to understand how the child is progressing around the year. So you can actually see if the parent has a smartphone, they can actually enable at-home learning for the child also. And they can also see what all has been covered, what is the kind of homework given to the child, how much is the child scoring. If the child has even missed a class, he can even know that. Let's say that the parent becomes significantly better involved thanks to technology. There's a lot that happens in terms of assessments. There's a lot of things that you can look at in terms of communication to the parent also. So, for example, the parent referral program that I talked about. Now, even the parent referral program is something that can actually be done through some sort of communication platform. It can be WhatsApp that uses communication to existing parents, or can be some other integrated ERP kind of solution that you could use. Right? So, Parush, slightly longer way of answering your question, but I hope I was able to address it in terms of how we can do it for the mid-segment fee schools. Okay. So, yes, I think the question from Saranya also we already answered. Any other questions, Rohit?
Yeah, so we have a question from Rahul Roy.
Okay.
How do we strategize admissions if we are starting new private university in a new location and there are other good institutes as well?
Got it. Got it. So I'm assuming Rahul is talking here of a college kind of an ecosystem. I'm not sure if he's talking about a private school, but what I spoke of here was more from the experience of the school perspective. Now, similar, I think a lot of these learnings would also be applicable in the case of a graduate or postgraduate program as well, right? In terms of how we communicate, again, the similar philosophy comes in terms of the year-long admissions, in terms of just come back to the thing, in terms of having a dedicated person who's looking after admissions, having your plan very clearly saying what do you want to be doing from here for the next 3-4 years, especially if, as you mentioned, it's a new institution. Creating a value proposition, or the value proposition here is slightly different. Now, the value proposition that you look at for a college or a university would be different. That would be more coming from an employability skill set kind of a perspective also, apart from the academic part of it. From the engagement part, it is pretty much similar in terms of being all-year engagement, all-year brand building that is required. From a visit experience, again, showcasing the infrastructure, showcasing the social and physical infrastructure, both showcasing the faculty, showcasing also in the college kind of a context, it's also about showcasing placement records, showcasing what kind of organizations have students joined, or what kind of further education opportunities have students gone to. There are multiple things that can happen, but I think the same 5 principles that we're talking of here continue for that as well.
Right. And Aparijita had same question, but in the context of a school in a residential area. So would you like to take that up as well, Deepa?
No, absolutely. So I think the question is about a school in a residential area where you have an old brand that is
Old
doing
brand doing well.
and
Yeah,
you are so I'm assuming the old brand already exists and it's some other player and you want to take on market share. Right now, as I said, there are schools which are very well established and which have some sort of formula for success. Now, this formula for success is typically built on the back of their credibility and their results they've been giving year on year. So typically, these schools would have been around for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, and would have built a brand name and have been teaching in a certain manner. Now, if you come in as a new player and you need to make a difference, clearly there has to be a value differentiation that comes in. Now, this value differentiation, as I said, can be significantly on the back of the technology element, on the back of the 360-degree holistic learning experience. Right? The difference that you're making is that a child can learn and experience much better using my program than using a conventional program. A lot of the well-established schools would be using a more conventional program. So showcasing that I am a smart school, not just for namesake by having one smart classroom, but I actually have smart TVs in every single classroom. Now, the smart TVs are not just TVs that are put there on the wall for show, but these are actually TVs that are being used in every single classroom, in every single core subject for the child to learn better. We have teachers who are teaching at the best level, internationally benchmark programs, the best in class lesson plans, and deliver the best learning experience. We have good infrastructure overall. And overall, if you were to look at it, please visit, spend 1 hour with us to understand our school better. Right. So the way it can be like you can create an event, you can create an event for parents to visit, or you can creating an event where parents can come in and see certain, or parents who already have children who are going to some other school, etc., can come in for some sort of a test or a contest. Once they've come in and they see the difference that you're offering and they experience a classroom. Now, you can do, if it's a large group of parents coming, you can do a parent orientation session, which is for 20, 30 parents at a time, where using the TV, using the tablet, or using any other technology that you have at hand, you go ahead and showcase that this is how your child will learn. If you have some methods by which you're making children learn experientially, or using the experience learning by doing kinesthetic way, then you can showcase that as well. You can actually, for example, as I said, fractions. If you want to showcase, how do you do it? If you want to show counting, how do you show tens, hundreds, thousands? It's a matter of having small cubes that kind of attach together, and you can say this is a set of 10 cross 10. That's multiplication. That's a box of 100 cubes. Right? There are different ways in which you can teach it. And if you actually run a 15-minute class for a parent, explain the concepts in this manner, that really impresses them and leaves them different. So if you have to actually win against an existing large competitor, that's the best way to do it.
Right. Great, Deepak. So we just received a very interesting question from Abid Imtiaz, which states how to open an inclusive school in an area where there are pre-existing therapy centers for special children.
Understood.
Yeah.
So, Imtiaz, I think this is a very specialized space that we're talking about, right? In terms of the children with special needs, right? Now, again, this is with special needs children, it's a very different way of doing it. So I'll break into two, three parts. So one is in terms of what are you offering, which is different for this in your facility as compared to other centers. Now, I think I'm just going to the wording of a question also specifically, where you're saying an inclusive school in an area where there are pre-existing therapy centers. So I'm assuming these therapy centers are not part of a school program. They're happening separately outside the school. Now, this could be some sort of a occupational therapy kind of a center, or any other special needs center. Now, the first element is that if you're running this program within the school itself, it is a world different because the child is learning as part of a school program. Typically, special needs children also have a attention span issue, or also in terms of the amount of exertion that they can go through. So doing it as part of a school program by itself is a huge differentiation as compared to an external therapy center, because therapy center is over and above school. And if somebody going to therapy center might be going to a conventional school and then doing therapy separately, which is a little confusing for the child as well. And a not very happy situation for them, because they had to cope up with the regular learning needs in a regular classroom and then do the special training in the different center. Now, if you're coming up, the primary difference is if you're doing it within the school paradigm itself, that by itself is a huge, huge differentiator. Number one. Number two, here again, I would not be able to give you specific inputs around this, because it depends on the nature of special children that you'd be able to cater to, what kind of capabilities a school has. But depending on the nature of capability and nature of children that you'd be able to cater to, I think this needs to be showcased differently. Now, this again is something that you would showcase specifically for to the parents, and this requires not just an admissions coordinator, this requires your faculty who are trained in dealing with the special children to actually be part of the admissions process. So this requires a very different treatment. So I request you to think through, and in terms of how specifically for your school you can go ahead and communicate it, because it's a very sensitive topic as well. And in terms of admission specifically, if you're looking at it, one option is also to talk to pediatricians or child clinics or special needs facilities that are there in your vicinity, and build your brand with them, because typically the child is going for some such support program. They would be able to recommend you. That will help you better.
Right.
Hope that answered it.
Great, great. I believe Abid has got his answer. So we have a lot more questions, Deepak, which we will take at the end of this session in our dedicated Q&A. So if you could just please continue with your presentation, please. Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you, Rohit. All right. So as I was saying, we are okay. So I was talking a little bit about Leadership Boulevard as well. So just going back to, so just a little bit of background about the organization as well, just for your reference. So we were founded about 11 years back in 2012 by Sumit and Smita, who started off with the vision of transforming school education in India. So our mission has been consistent right from day one, wherein our objective is to offer excellent education accessible to every child, right? Excellent, accessible, and every. And those are the three key words to take from here, because everybody talks about education and children, right? And our aim is to actually provide propulsive learning. And when you say propulsive learning, it means learning that makes a big difference in the child to actually do a step jump, not in terms of just academics, but also in terms of life skills. And our aim is to bring it to 26 million children across 60,000 schools. As of today, we are in 9,000 schools across 400 plus cities and towns, as I mentioned earlier. So we're spread across the country. Look at every corner of the country, from the eastmost to the westmost, northmost, southmost, we are present. And our flagship brand was Lead. We have, for the last 6-7 years, we have been offering our Lead solution to as an integrated solution to a lot of progressive schools across the country. And more recently, earlier this year, we also acquired the Pearson India K-12 business, which brings a lot of publishing capability to us. Now, in terms of, I think there were a few requests about how we can help schools, etc., that come up in the Q&A and as part of the chat. So just addressing some of that. So in terms of, I think I broadly talked to you about the multimodal learning that is possible, the kinesthetic learning that is possible as part of the program, the current capability-based learning, which is personalized, and also the exposure that happens. How we make teachers a super teacher by getting an ordinary teacher, especially as Parush had asked, there are a lot of middle fee schools. If I were to look at the fee segment, there is just this much. There's, let's say, 50,000 schools which actually are able to charge more than 35-40,000 rupees in fees in the whole country put together. Right? There are about 1.5-2 lakh schools which are in the fee segment, which is between 10,000 rupees to 50,000 rupees. And there are another 2-3 lakh schools which are below 10,000 rupees in fees. Okay? So the quality of teachers that come across different schools are very different. And if you're able to give them a standardized program in terms of lesson plans, in terms of resources, and in terms of certification and handholding, in terms of training, etc., that really helps them improve their performance and give a high quality education in accompaniment with the infrastructure you put in there. And of course, the technology part of it. Now, in terms of also helping our partner schools that sign up with us, we do 3 things towards it. So number 1 is setting up the experience hub. So wherein we actually set up a television, we set up a teacher training tablet as part of it. The sample books are part of it, wherein any prospective parent who walks in can actually experience how a classroom will be run. So your admissions coordinator or a relevant teacher can actually go ahead and do the demo class for either, now this, for example, the sample parent orientation, which actually it can happen for a single parent, it can happen for 20-30 parents at a time, where you can actually showcase, this is how your child will be learning next year if a child enrolls with us. That is the greatest memory aid for a person, and that really builds a lasting impression. And we've seen for whatever parent orientation we've done, about 80-85% of the parents are extremely happy with it, and a good number of them end up signing up as a consequence. Second is from a teacher orientation. Now, teacher orientation is when you're training your teachers on the program, getting their buy-in, and also training them on how they can address current parents and prospective parents. We talked about the teacher referral program earlier. Then the teacher goes and informs their current students, the students' parents during the parent-teacher meets or in any other informal catch-ups about the new programs that the school is bringing in, about the changes the school is doing, or how the school is different from any other school, and helps spread the word in the community and gets you more volume, more walk-ins. And thirdly, we will also train your admissions coordinator to run these parent orientation sessions, one-on-one or group sessions completely, so that they can actually explain the entire value and help take things forward. Right? That's it. I mean, with all this coming in, still we are not a genie. And we are not a magical formula saying that you just subscribe to our programs and immediately you get the admissions. It requires commitment from your side also, a full involvement from the school owners, from the principals to make it happen, and also having the strong admissions owner from your side, who is basically your admissions coordinator, really helps. And you need to spend the time and effort from your side to make it happen. We can enable you towards it, but that final effort has to come from your side in terms of reaping the most out of it. So
Right,
that's broadly
right.
what we had. And there are 4 kinds of programs that we have. Lead, which works for the mid-level schools, 15,000 to 30,000 rupee fees very well. There is Pearson, who has a fantastic publisher solution. We have Pinnacle Plus, which works for schools which are slightly higher fee, more than 30,000 in fees. And we have Propel, that works for schools with less than 15,000 rupees in fees. These are annual fees I'm talking about.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Deepak. Thank you for your detailed insights. Before we move on to the Q&A sections, we have a lot of questions to take up. I would request everyone to engage with just one last poll, which I'll be launching on the screen right now. How confident are you feeling about implementing the 5 processes to drive quality admissions for your school? Just what Deepak has been talking about for the past 1 hour. So please let us know how confident you guys are. Audience, I would urge everyone to engage with the poll so we could take up the questions. This lets us know how well did you understand the 5 processes that Deepak has shared, and we could shed more light on it in the Q&A section if you want. So I will end the poll in 3, 2, 1. Deepak, uh, as you can see on your screen, 40% of the audience is quite confident, and 38% are moderately confident. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, everyone. And
Yeah, Deepak, let's move on to the Q&A section now. Thank you for the such a detailed insights.
thank you.
So Preet is asking, it is can you please share some tactics to attract parents who are generally attracted to schools who offer less fees, maybe like organizing free carnivals, etc. Are there some tactics you would like to shed some light upon, Deepak?
Yes. So I think in terms of schools that offer less fees now, uh, see, typically as a parent, you always want what's best for the child, and as somebody who's running a family, you always want something that's good for the budget as well, right? So typically, a parent would, if given an option of 3 schools, and school A, school B, school C seem very similar in terms of infrastructure, in terms of learning methods, in terms of teachers, in terms of everything else, then the person would go for the lowest cost option. Right? That's a default human behavior, and which is understandable as well. But
Right.
if we're looking at attracting them, the one key thing to do is to stand out in terms of the offerings that you have. That is the biggest differentiator that you have. Right now, if a parent is continuing to go to a school which is lower in terms of pedigree from yours, in terms of the offering, and wants a lower fee solution, then okay, maybe that parent is not meant for you. right? So, but as a progressive school owner, if as a school owner, how does the school economics work? And we have been running this in the past. So when we ran our own schools, initially we were running about 35, 40 schools in the first year, and then subsequently now we're running 9,000 schools. What we have seen is the schools who have at least 350, 400 students become economically viable. And then after that is when, as you start scaling up, as you start getting more admissions, you start building more confidence, you charge more fees. And then because you're able to deliver good quality, parents are okay with the fees, and more parents still coming at the fee bracket. So initially in the first year or so, it may not be very easy for someone to crack it and be able to charge a high fees unless you're able to differentiate yourself solidly. So even here, when you're competing with some other school who's charging a lower fee, the big difference would be in terms of how do you, just like, say, for example, organizing free carnival, etc. is good. You should go ahead and hold the fees that you feel is right for you for it to be sustainable, right? Not too high, not too low, but at least sustainable. And then go ahead and create the value perception in the parent than to do freebies. So education and health are two places where freebies don't necessarily work. Right? Even if you get a free medicine, you're not going to take it just because it's free. Right? Same way with the school. Ideally, if I mean, unless there's a world of a difference in terms of fees, if the fee difference is going to be 2,000, 3,000 rupees, but you're showing considerably better value, they should come to you. So it's important how you have the right value in the first place and how you communicate it after that.
Right. Thank you, Deepak, for sharing that. We have another question from Anita Chaudhary.
Hmm.
Do you provide support for creating yearly school curriculum for state board affiliated schools?
Yes. So Anita ji, yes, we do. So we have support for multiple state boards. So currently we have support for Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, AP, and a few other state boards at this point of time. So we support CBSE and state boards. Currently, we don't support ICSE yet.
Right, right, great. Another question from Anita herself. How to train teachers in remote area schools?
Okay. So see, training of teachers, as you rightly said, is something that uh, especially in remote areas, it becomes difficult to do in-person training because the quality of infrastructure available, quality of trainers would not be that adequate. Now, typically, if I were to look at, for example, I'm taking any of the programs of LEAD, we typically would have about 2 in-person training programs where we have an expert trainer coming in from our side and training the teachers. Now, that apart from that, there are 2 other key things that are relevant here. So I'm just going to also open that slide just for reference. So there are the learning plans which are part of we have something called a lead university, a pinnacle university, etc., built into the app itself. So a teacher can go ahead and assess their own self-paced certification program. What this means is there will be specific modules about the learning program itself, number one. And second is also a self-skilling in terms of soft skills, in terms of other skills that a teacher requires, which are available as part of it. Now, as the teacher on a self-paced basis, they can go ahead and learn it in their free time, and as they complete the credits, as they complete the program, they also get certificates for those programs. Right? And specifically for things like lesson plan. Now, if you were to look at a typical teacher trying to teach in a conventional manner, the day plan in terms of what the resource the teacher has is a textbook. Right? Basis the textbook, the teacher has to plan saying today is the first day of this chapter I'm going to teach. I need to cover this topic to this topic. And this is how I'm going to do it. This is the planning. This is the phasing that I have of how I'm going to show it. This is what I'm going to write on the board. This is what I'm going to draw. This is the chart I'm going to use. Now, that is left to the intelligence of the teacher. Now, if you were to simplify it and bring it into a lesson plan, which is already pre-developed, saying during a class, before a class, there's a 5-minute preparation the teacher needs to do where there is something that's showcased in terms of how the class will be run. During the class, there's a prescription saying that during the first 5 minutes of the class, say X, Y, Z. Showcase this. So, for example, if it is a class which is on fractions, right? Then you'd say at the start of the class, go ahead and draw this on the board, show this. Or if you're taking a lead program, then it is like, for example, showcase this video or showcase this image on the TV, which the child can appreciate and learn from. What exactly to say along with it? So, for example, if it's fraction, assume that you actually have those 4 quarters of a circle becoming a full circle. So someone understands that the 4 quarters equals 1. Same thing through a kinesthetic learning, the 4 quarters are as like those rubber circles which you join together and make it 1 circle. So all of it comes together in terms of what is on the TV, what is in the hand in terms of experiential learning, and also what the teacher is doing. So now the teacher has a program which helps the teacher run every classroom effectively, which means the teacher does not need a separate training. Everything that's required to run the class is part of the program. I hope that understood.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Deepak. We are unfortunately running out of time, so I would just take up one more question.
Sure.
It's from Devendra Kumar from the Man School.
Mm-hmm.
The Man School is a co-ed day come boarding school spread over more than 20 acres of land in Delhi. They have students from all over India and abroad. How
Mm-hmm.
can they increase the number of boards admissions for the next academic session?
Thank you, Devendraji, for reaching out to that. So what we talked about today are in terms of, I think, the core philosophy of it. If we were to look at it from the perspective of the value creation, the planning part of it, the value creation, the communication, the engagement, and the experience. All of these are equally applicable both in the physical ecosystem and in the digital ecosystem. Right now, as you rightly mentioned, a lot of your parents, especially the ones who are looking for boarding admissions, would be coming from different parts of the country or from overseas. So the questions that so in terms of the approach, if you were to look at it, the five finger approach that we talked about would be the same, irrespective of whether you're doing it physically or digitally. So just spending a minute probably on that. Sorry, yeah. So just spending a minute on that. The planning activity, exactly the same. You would still have an admissions coordinator. Now the admissions coordinator needs to be a lot more video conferencing savvy, who's comfortable doing Zoom webinars, right? Like this one, imagine your admissions coordinator is going to be doing a webinar with prospective parents. Second is creating the value differentiation. Now, the value differentiation bases your salient strengths of your program plus any other program that you're running or you plan to run in the coming years. That has to be different from other programs because, especially for a boarding program, the effort of decision making or the effort of convincing the parent is very different because you're letting go of a child to go elsewhere to study. So if you need to have a reputation which is at par with, let's say, the Doon School and those kind of very prominent boarding programs, you need to have a strong differentiation. So you need to figure what the differentiation is and call that out clearly. This engagement that happens now, instead of being physically doing contests, can actually be virtual. Like, for example, you create a national Olympiad of sorts or some sort of a some sort of contest in a suitable domain that you can showcase. You will need to use digital marketing here extensively. Right. So apart from what we do physically, using channels like Facebook and Instagram, etc., are going to be very, very important. And apart from it, you will also need to establish yourself as a knowledge leader in the geographies where you're talking of. So, for example, if your clientele is coming from Dubai, you need to figure out how do you establish yourself as knowledge leader with education counselors in Dubai, who might be the people who are recommending which school a child should go to in India. In terms of the visit experience, while here we talk of physical visits, there it needs to be more a digital experience where someone's walking them through the whole thing. You would need to create virtual tours and other kind of elements and a good website to showcase that better. And the engagement stays as usual. Now, with the kind of parents who would be sending the children to a boarding school, WhatsApp plus email, both forms of communication become equally important. I hope that answers the question.
Right. Thank you so much, Deepak, for answering all those questions. Uh, Thank you so much for today's insightful and fun session, Deepak. I think due to limited time, unfortunately, we'll have to conclude the sessions. Audience, I'm sharing a link to the feedback form in the chat. Do share your feedback on the webinar. We would love to get to know how the webinar was for you guys. So I'll just be sharing the uh, form link with all of you in the chat.
Yes. And I guess there were a large number of questions that could not get addressed. So probably,
Yeah,
is there a way, Rohit, that they can share those questions also and probably
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we can get back to
If
you?
we couldn't answer your questions because of limited time, we you can just use the phone number I have also pasted in the chat or the email ID, and you can reach out to us with those questions as well.
Absolutely.
We would love
Absolutely.
to answer those questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, great. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in on this insightful and fun session. I believe you received lot of insights and a lot of information about how to grow admissions at your schools. Thank you for joining in, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.